Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and welcome to our coverage of the arrival of the unpiloted SpaceX Dragon cargo craft at the Orbital Laboratory. You're looking at a live view inside the ISS Flight Control Room here in Houston, where the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers is on duty at this hour. This is the lead flight control team for SpaceX 5 Dragon operations, led by Flight Director Mike Lammers, who you see in the middle of your picture. To his left, at the bottom of your screen, is Flight Director Dana Cantella, and at the top of your screen in the gold shirt is astronaut Randy Bresnik, the spacecraft communicator, who will be talking directly to the crew on board the International Space Station throughout the course of this morning's activities. So far, so good. The rendezvous right on track. In fact, the Dragon spacecraft is running a few minutes ahead of schedule, meeting its gate posts as it moves through its rendezvous procedures that began with its launch atop the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on Saturday morning at 3:47 a.m. Central Time, 4:47 a.m. Eastern Time, from the launch pad at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Some 10 minutes after launch, Dragon separated from the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, deployed its solar arrays. All of its navigation systems were checked out, and over the past 48 hours it has been a flawless rendezvous for Dragon to this point, with Dragon inside 250 meters or 820 feet of its target point, which will be a capture point some 50 or so feet away from the International Space Station, where astronauts Butch Wilmore of NASA, the Expedition 42 commander, and flight engineer Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency will be standing by in the cupola of the International Space Station, operating from a robotics workstation in the cupola to extend the Canadarm2 robotic arm, the 57-foot-long robotic arm on the station. That will be extended toward a grapple fixture on Dragon, and it will be grappled and locked on at the end of that end effector of the robotic arm for a capture of Dragon. The current capture time is 5:12 a.m. Central Time, 6:12 a.m. Eastern Time, although there is nothing magic about that time. As long as we are in daylight, if the crew is ready to extend and capture a few minutes earlier than planned, then they will be given the go-ahead by the flight control team here in Houston, assuming that all of the Dragon systems can accommodate that. Again, all of the rendezvous burns so far have been adjusted accordingly, so that the Dragon has arrived at its milestone points a few minutes ahead of schedule, with all of its systems in excellent shape. About an hour and a half ago at 2:01 a.m. Central Time, 3:01 a.m. Eastern Time, Dragon arrived at a point about 8 nautical miles behind and underneath the International Space Station. Station Commander Butch Wilmore radioed down to Mission Control and spacecraft communicator Randy Bresnik that he was able to get his first view of the unpiloted cargo craft.
Tally-ho on Dragon, Houston.
All right, Butch, thanks a lot. Good luck.
Yeah, the sun's flashing off the solar rays and looks like it's winking at us. It's pretty neat.
That's awesome.
Again, that short exchange between Station Commander Butch Wilmore and spacecraft communicator Randy Bresnik here in Mission Control, occurring about an hour and a half ago at a point at which Dragon was some 8 nautical miles behind and underneath the International Space Station. A short time after that, a height adjustment burn called the approach initiation burn was executed automatically through the pre-programmed thruster firing sequence loaded into Dragon's computers, and that began its approach to what is called the R-bar, the radial vector, the imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the center of the Earth. The Dragon arrived at the R-bar directly underneath the station, not quite an hour ago and began its slow approach, inching up the R-bar towards its various gate posts, first at the 350-meter point, then the 250-meter point, and now Dragon is moving towards a position some 100 meters or 328 feet away from the station. There will be a final station-keeping position some 30 meters directly below the station, or 98 feet directly below the station. The flight control teams here in Houston and at Hawthorne in California, where the SpaceX flight control room is located, as you see in this live view from Hawthorne, all of the flight control teams will tag up and provide a go, no-go decision for final approach and capture of the Dragon. Once Wilmore and Cristoforetti put the clamps on the grapple fixture through the station's robotic arm, then they will take a breather while the robotics officer here in Mission Control, John Bellingham, does his work to remotely control and operate the station's robotic arm, maneuvering Dragon into a position for its installation on the Earth-facing port, or the nadir port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. The Dragon will be carefully positioned so that it is perfectly aligned. Its common berthing mechanism will be perfectly aligned with the similar common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing side of Harmony into what is called a pre-install position, and then there will be a series of ready-to-latch indications received here in Mission Control, where the Dragon then will be bolted into place by 16 bolts, 4 gangs of 4 bolts apiece, to securely latch Dragon onto the Earth-facing port of Harmony, and that will be a hard mate that will complete Dragon's journey to the International Space Station. The Dragon is loaded with some 2.6 tons of supplies and scientific experiments for the Expedition 42 crew, and in fact some of the supplies on board Dragon are earmarked for Scott Kelly, the NASA astronaut who will be launching in just 2 months from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan to spend a full year in space with Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko. Scott Kelly has some crew preference items and a crew care package on board Dragon that will be stowed away for him, Kelly on the left, Kornienko on the right. In that crew picture of the two of them, the 2 crew members here in Houston in the final weeks of their training prior to returning for good to Russia for the final phase of the training that will lead to their launch on the afternoon of March 27th, Baikonur, on their 1-year mission aboard the International Space Station. One of the items also being carried on board the Dragon cargo craft is a scientific instrument called the CATS. That is the nickname of that particular science investigation, the Cloud Aerosol Transport System that is housed in the trunk of the Dragon. On Friday, in the wee hours of Friday morning, if all goes as planned, CATS will be grappled and removed from the trunk of the Dragon and will be installed on the external science experiment platform of the Kibo module, the porch, if you will, of the Kibo module, along with several other experiments currently housed out there to investigate aerosols and other phenomena in the Earth's atmosphere. So that robotic operation coming up on Friday in the wee hours of this week on Friday morning. Dragon is scheduled to spend about 4 weeks attached to the Harmony module of the International Space Station. Once it is bolted into place this morning, the crew will spend several hours later today checking out the leak checks that are common for any visiting vehicle to the International Space Station to make sure that we have a tight seal between the vehicle just arrived and the International Space Station. Once those leak checks are accomplished, the crew, if it wishes to later today, that's at their own discretion, can feel free to open up the hatch to Dragon and begin to unload its cache of cargo, although the actual hatch opening is scheduled for the wee hours of Tuesday morning. So we'll know more about that later today once we get Dragon installed and latched and bolted, and once the leak checks are completed by the crew on board the International Space Station. The International Space Station is currently orbiting 261 statute miles over the Indian Ocean, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. All of the systems on board the International Space Station are in excellent shape. This activity is kicking off an extraordinarily busy 6-week period for the crew on board the station that not only will see Dragon's arrival today and its departure on February 10th, but also 3 spacewalks scheduled for mid to late February by Butch Wilmore and Terry Virts, the final departure of the European Automated Transfer Vehicle that is set for February 14th, and a variety of other activity associated with scientific research on board the orbital outpost, as well as the delivery of more supplies on a Russian unmanned Progress resupply vehicle that is scheduled for launch on February 17th from Baikonur.
All right, we got some good news that we've been tracking early on the approach, about 10 minutes the whole time, and so we expect a 30-meter arrival at approximately 09:55. There is an opportunity to leave 30 meters early. If we hit the window of departing between 10:13 and 10:17, we'll actually get to the go for capture window, and we'll just wait for sunrise plus 1 minute, and your guys' positive evaluation that lighting is good, and we'll be able to go for capture approximately 20 minutes early if you guys are ready.
And we'll be ready. If the conditions are good, we'll be ready to capture.
Houston copies.
Randy Bresnik talking to European Space Agency astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti, who's in the cupola of the International Space Station, along with Station Commander Butch Wilmore, who will be prime for the capture of Dragon, backed up by Cristoforetti, who will be monitoring Dragon systems during the final phase of its approach to be placed in the go for capture orientation just a few feet away from the International Space Station a short time from now. As you heard that brief exchange, since Dragon has arrived at its milestone positions a few minutes ahead of schedule, it can be captured as early as sunrise plus 1 minute. That would be the earliest go for capture that would be issued by the flight control team here in Houston, depending on whether or not Dragon systems are all in order and if the crew is ready to support an early capture for the Dragon spacecraft. There's nothing magic about the 5:12 a.m. capture time, Central Time. That is the target based on pre-launch calculations by the flight control team in Hawthorne, responsible for Dragon's rendezvous profile, as well as the coordination with the visiting vehicle officer, Dave Harshman, here in Mission Control in Houston. So we'll be standing by to see how much in advance of that 5:12 capture time we are running. It is possible that Dragon could be grappled ahead of schedule this morning because everything is going so smoothly. As mentioned a few minutes ago, everything on the Dragon has been operating to perfection since it was launched atop the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in the wee hours Saturday morning. The Falcon 9 delivering Dragon into a nearly perfect preliminary orbit, after which a series of pre-programmed rendezvous maneuvers, burns of its thrusters were executed on computer command. And over the past 2 days, the Dragon has increased its altitude and its fine-tuning of its path to the International Space Station, placing it in position almost 2 hours ago for its point at which it executed the height adjustment burn and an approach initiation burn, as it is called in the parlance of the rendezvous world, to begin its final approach toward the R-bar, the position directly underneath the International Space Station, for its final approach for capture. The capture itself, again, executed by Wilmore and Cristoforetti, operating the station's robotic arm, the Canadarm2, from a robotics workstation in the cupola of the International Space Station, which is a standard practice now for arriving cargo vehicles at the International Space Station. Wilmore and Terry Virts will be collaborating on a trio of spacewalks beginning no earlier than February 16th now, in order to equip the station for the reconfiguration of several modules and a variety of hardware that will accommodate the installation of the equipment needed for the eventual arrival of the first of two international docking adapters later this year on the SpaceX 7 cargo craft that is scheduled for the summer time frame. The arrival of the international docking adapter, the first of two such adapters, will set the stage for its installation on the forward end of pressurized mating adapter number 2, which used to be the port of call for space shuttles before the shuttle retired, of course, some 4 years ago. The PMA-2, as it is known, at the forward position of the Harmony module of the International Space Station will be equipped with one of these docking adapters that can accommodate the commercial crew vehicles that will be launched in the next several years by commercial companies, being Boeing and SpaceX at the moment. And there's a great view of the Dragon spacecraft as it flies over the Indian Ocean to the southwest of the continent of Australia. All of the systems on Dragon in excellent shape as we are approaching the final hour and a half of its two-day rendezvous to the International Space Station that to this point has been flawless. Meanwhile, inside the cupola on the left is Station Commander Butch Wilmore, Samantha Cristoforetti of the International Space Station in the middle of your picture, and manning the camera looking out of the windows is Alexander Samokhutyaev, one of the 3 Russians on board the International Space Station, who arrived with Wilmore and Elena Serova in late September on a Soyuz vehicle to begin their 5.5 months on the orbital outpost. At the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California, the mission director for this 5th commercial resupply flight of SpaceX and the 6th overall flight of the SpaceX Dragon to the station, Paul Tompkins, is reviewing the flight rules and the timeline for the rest of Dragon's approach for capture. We are inside 60 meters now, about to approach the 30-meter hold point where the Dragon will put the brakes on and await a final check of its systems before initiating its final approach for capture. As you can see in this view of Dragon, The end of Dragon, not with the solar rays, the other end, facing the 7 o'clock position on your screen, that is the passive common berthing mechanism at the end of the Dragon cargo craft that will be attached and bolted into place to the active common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module. After Dragon is captured, Wilmore and Christopher Eddy will take a break and allow the robotics officer, John Bellingham, here in Mission Control, to take over and maneuver the Dragon with the Canadarm2 firmly in grasp of its grapple fixture to an installation position just a few millimeters away from the ready-to-latch position, where sensors in the common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing port of Harmony will sense the positioning of the common berthing mechanism at the end of Dragon, and then we'll begin the process of bolting Dragon into place through a series of 16 bolts, 4 gangs of 4 bolts apiece, to form a hard mate between Dragon and Harmony. At that point, the next several hours will be devoted to leak checks to make sure that we have a tight seal between Dragon and the Earth-facing port of Harmony before the vestibule, the small passageway between Harmony and Dragon, can be equipped for the eventual hatch opening of Dragon that is scheduled in the very early morning hours of Tuesday, unless the crew wishes to press ahead late today in its workday to open the hatch before the end of business and the start of their sleep period some 11.5 hours from now. SpaceX's Dragon cargo craft that you see now in this view from the end effector at the end of the Canadarm2 robotic arm, as it approaches the 30-meter station keeping position, or 98 feet away from the station. The top portion of Dragon that you see is the only cargo craft that returns to Earth, able to deliver cargo and experiments back to researchers back on terra firma. The current departure date for SpaceX is Tuesday, February 10th. The release time at the moment is scheduled at 12:53 p.m. Central Time. That would result in a splashdown in the Pacific shortly after 6 p.m. Central Time or 4 p.m. Pacific Time. SpaceX will be operating and has approved for a nighttime recovery of the Dragon capsule out in the Pacific, with the splashdown point expected to be some 300 nautical miles southwest of Long Beach, California.
Station, Houston on 2 for Butch. Dragon is holding at 30 meters. Please perform step 4 in 1.102.
Houston for step 4. Primary range is 29.68. Secondary range is 29.51. The LEDs match the expectation, and we can confirm the hold.
Houston copies.
And you can see the same display being viewed in the cupola by Butch Wilmore and Samantha Cristoforetti, who are operating the station's robotic arm, the 57-foot-long Canadarm2, that will reach out and grapple the grapple fixture on Dragon a short time from now. Dragon arriving at the final hold point at 30 meters or 98 feet away from the station at 3:56 a.m. Central Time. SpaceX Mission Director Paul Tompkins indicating out of the SpaceX control room in Hawthorne, California, that they are shooting for a departure at 4:13 a.m. Central Time to close the gap and arrive at the capture point, at which point Wilmore and Cristoforetti will operate the arm to reach out and grab onto Dragon. So it does appear that we will have an earlier than planned capture of Dragon if all of its systems continue to operate in excellent shape and if the crew is ready to do so. SpaceX flight controllers to be joined momentarily by the flight controllers here in Houston, taking a final go, no-go poll for departure inside 30 meters. The International Space Station and the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft loaded with 2.6 tons of cargo for the Expedition 42 crew and crews beyond that, moving into an orbital sunset over the southern Tasman Sea, moving to the south of New Zealand, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly track across the Pacific Ocean. Everything is in great shape with Dragon, heading for what appears to be an early capture time, much earlier than the originally scheduled time of 5:12 a.m. Central Time. It appears that we will beat that. The expected departure time from the 30-meter station-keeping point now is 4:13 a.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston. To recap at this hour, you're looking at a view of the SpaceX Dragon unpiloted cargo craft filled with 2.6 tons of supplies and scientific experiments for the crew on board the International Space Station. This view out of the end effector camera at the very end of the 57-foot-long Canadarm2 robotic arm. Inside the cupola of the ISS, there is Butch Wilmore, the station commander at the bottom, joined by European Space Agency flight engineer Samantha Cristoforetti, as they review procedures prior to the time the Dragon will begin its push inside 30 meters or 98 feet, where it is station keeping at the moment. At the 57-foot mark or so, or the 50-foot mark, Dragon will be captured by Wilmore operating the arm, backed up in his efforts by Cristoforetti. You're also looking inside the cupola, Russian cosmonaut Alexander Samokhutyaev, who is operating a camera documenting the Dragon as it sits passively over the Pacific Ocean, flying to the southeast of New Zealand at the moment, moving from southwest to northeast. Dragon arrived at all of its milestone points some 20 minutes or so ahead of schedule each time, first arriving at the lower end of the R-bar, or the radial vector, the imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the center of the Earth. It moved up the R-bar first to a 350-meter position, then 250 meters, and finally to the 30-meter mark, where it is currently station keeping. We are expecting the final go and a departure inside 30 meters to be initiated about 8 minutes from now. And a good view of the strobe light on Dragon for situational awareness for the flight control team here in Houston and at Hawthorne, California. The visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control, Dave Harshman, has been talking to his counterparts in his back room, as well as in Hawthorne, California, making sure that all of the ballistic and rendezvous sensor information and data from Dragon all is aligned, and everything is in great shape to this point, as we are about 6 minutes away from Dragon reinitiating its final approach for capture.
Houston on 2, we have completed step 4 in 1.102, and the crew is ready for Dragon approach to capture point.
All right, Samantha, Houston copies that. We appreciate it. We'll be given the go. Expect that around 10:13. And if we could get you guys to do the pan from step 3 of 1.110 for camera 3, that'll help out for the capture.
Houston, we copy. That's in work.
Coming up on about the 4-minute mark before Dragon reinitiates its approach for capture, as you heard Samantha Cristoforetti confirming that the crew has completed its checklist and everything is in great shape on board the station, ready to receive a new cargo vehicle filled with some 2.6 tons of supplies and experiments. And here in the flight control room, Mike Lammers, the station flight director, has given Paul Tompkins, the SpaceX flight director, mission director in Hawthorne, final approval from the team here in Houston for Dragon to resume its approach for capture, to move inside 30 meters, its final station keeping point. We're expecting that reinitiation of approach in about 3 minutes from now.
Complete.
Coming up on the resumption of final approach by Dragon, it will reinitiate its pre-programmed approach just a few seconds from now. That would set us up for the earliest capture time at 1 minute after sunrise, or approximately 4:39 a.m. Central Time. We'll be standing by for an update on that. And the Dragon has reinitiated its approach for capture by the crew on board the International Space Station. Dragon now moving inside 30 meters or 98 feet to its capture point. The International Space Station. Dragon now moving.
Station Houston on 2. Dragon has begun approach from 30 meters. Please perform step 5 in 1.102.
Houston Station, we copy. Houston Station, we copy. Houston on 2 with an update on block Bravo, if you're ready to copy.
Ready, copy, Bravo, please.
No changes in block Bravo, with the exception of the offset. I see an offset of, let's say, 10% of the vehicle length forward on camera 3, and no port starboard offset. And I see an offset of about 10% of the vehicle with starboard on camera 9 and no forward aft offset.
Houston copies all. Grazie.
This is Mission Control Houston, a good view of the Dragon cargo craft launched by SpaceX from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida 2 days ago in the wee hours of Saturday morning at 3:47 a.m. Central, 4:47 a.m. Eastern Time. The Dragon was inserted into a perfect preliminary orbit, separating from the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket of SpaceX some 10 minutes or so after launch. It deployed its solar arrays. All of its navigational systems were operated and activated, and it has been conducting an inexorable approach to the International Space Station ever since. All of the major milestones being ticked off somewhat ahead of schedule, and as a result, the grapple of the Dragon is now expected less than 30 minutes from now, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4:39 Central Time, 5:39 Eastern Time. The earliest time for grapple would be 1 minute after sunrise, and that is the time at 4:39 Central, 5:39 Eastern. We'll keep you updated on the exact grapple time. Because Dragon's capture is anticipated to occur some 35 minutes ahead of schedule or so, we are also expecting its installation to run ahead of schedule, and as a result we've adjusted our installation coverage time to 6:45 a.m. Central, 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time, some 30 minutes ahead of where we had intended to start our installation coverage. So we'll keep you updated on all of the timing of the key events for Dragon this morning, but at the moment, with Dragon systems in excellent shape and a go for final approach being given by both the SpaceX flight control team in Hawthorne and the team here in Mission Control in Houston, Dragon is on the final few meters of its journey, where the robotic arm, you're looking at this view out of the end effector camera at the end of the Canadarm2 robotic arm. This arm will be extended by Station Commander Butch Wilmore for a grapple on the grapple fixture facing that end effector, with the current grapple time expected around 4:39 a.m. Central. The International Space Station and Dragon currently moving from southwest to northeast across the Pacific Ocean, will cross the west coast of Mexico north of Guadalajara a short time from now. Again, the grapple of Dragon expected to occur some 35 minutes ahead of schedule at a time that would be no earlier than 1 minute after sunrise to provide the appropriate lighting for Station Commander Butch Wilmore, who is the prime crew member for the grapple of Dragon, operating from the robotics workstation inside the cupola of the International Space Station, backed up by European Space Agency flight engineer Samantha Cristoforetti. Dragon now just 20 meters away from being captured. The robotic arm will be put in motion by Butch Wilmore on the direction of the robotics officer here in Mission Control, John Bellingham. a good view of the grapple fixture on the SpaceX cargo ship, the top portion of which is the only cargo vehicle that returns intact with returning cargo and scientific experiments of all of the international fleet of resupply vehicles. That grapple fixture directly underneath that is a suite of navigation sensors used to inform the SpaceX's onboard computers on the Dragon as to its position in space relative to the Earth, and to help guide it during its complex rendezvous to reach the International Space Station. The Dragon is now about 16 meters away. The robotic arm will be in motion shortly to reach out and grapple the Dragon to complete its journey to the International Space Station. Once the grapple is completed, then the robotics officer here in Mission Control will take over and send the commands to remotely maneuver Dragon into a pre-installed position just a few centimeters from the common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. The bolting of Dragon will then begin, monitored by Butch Wilmore and Samantha Cristoforetti in the cupola of the International Space Station. That bolting ensues with 4 gangs of 4 bolts apiece, or 16 bolts in all, securing Dragon for a hard mate to the nadir or Earth-facing port of Harmony.
Houston on 2 for Dragon. We turned the strobe light off.
Houston copies. Thank you.
All of the navigational information continues to come in very well and on track for the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control. You heard Samantha Cristoforetti a moment ago report that she sent a command through a laptop computer in the cupola to turn off the strobe light on the Dragon cargo craft so as to prevent it from being distracting to Station Commander Butch Wilmore as he extends the station's robotic arm for a capture on that grapple fixture you see right in the middle of your screen. The SpaceX Dragon cargo craft in the International Space Station flying 261 statute miles, passing just to the south of Baja California, approaching the west coast of Mexico, north of Guadalajara, on a track taking the two craft from southwest to northeast. This path will take the two vehicles over northern Mexico and southwest Texas, passing to the northwest of San Antonio a short time from now. Dragon has arrived at its capture point, according to flight controllers at the SpaceX Control Center in Hawthorne.
Station Houston on 2. Dragon is holding at the capture point. Please perform step 6 in 1.102.
Houston Station, we copy and work.
That exchange between Randy Bresnik, the spacecraft communicator here in Mission Control, and Samantha Cristoforetti, indicating that the procedures now will be Canadarm2 towards the grapple fixture on Dragon, with capture anticipated no earlier than 1 minute after we put in place to begin the movement of the station's robotic arm, the Canadarm2, towards the grapple fixture on Dragon, with capture anticipated no earlier than 1 minute after sunrise, which would be approximately 4:39 a.m. Central Time, 5:39 Eastern. Eager to grab onto Dragon and get it bolted into place, running well ahead of schedule, some 35 minutes or so ahead of schedule, since everything has been going so smoothly with the rendezvous and all of Dragon slid into place. As has been the case in previous missions, if the crew continues to be as eager as it has been throughout the course of the morning, and if everything continues to go smoothly, it is entirely feasible that the hatch to the Dragon could be open late this afternoon as opposed to early tomorrow morning.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Right now as well, but we understand we're going to be waiting for sunrise.
Houston copies all, Samantha, and you are correct. Should be about another 7 minutes till we're sunrise, plus 1 minute, and the expected or anticipated opening of the
Okay, copy that. Thanks. Thanks.
taking a poll of its flight controllers to get a go, no-go to place Dragon into what is called free drift, turning off its thrusters to prevent the point of capture with the Dragon that you see in view able to be very quiescent for its capture by the end grapple fixture at the end of the Dragon that you see in view, able to be very effector on the station's Canadarm2 robotic arm. And a slight update on our timing, since SpaceX is running ahead of schedule with Dragon in great shape and ready to be captured by Wilmore and Christopher Reddy. We expect to give the crew a go for capture in 5 minutes from now at 4:40 Central Time, 5:40 Eastern Time. The robotic arm then will be extended by Wilmore. Christopher Reddy will be monitoring Dragon's systems, both operating side by side in the cupola of the International Space Station. The crossing point here will be 1 minute after sunrise, so the crew will be given a go at 4:40 Central Time, 5 minutes from now, to begin the final phase of this rendezvous procedure.
Station Houston on 2 for Samantha. Just reconfirming that you guys said that you are ready for capture at the opening of the window.
Houston, that is affirmative. We are ready to go.
Copy that, Butch. Stand by for the final go.
Dragon and the International Space Station currently passing over Fort Wayne, Indiana, just about to fly directly over Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Detroit en route to southern Canada. It is the Canadarm2 robotic arm on the station that is the focus of attention now. Butch Wilmore awaiting a final go to begin extending the robotic arm at 1 minute after sunrise. That is about 2 minutes from now, at which point the arm will be positioned directly over the pin of the grapple fixture, and then the snares on the end effector will grab onto the grapple fixture itself and close around it, and at that point Dragon will have been captured. We've lost our downlink television signal from the International Space Station here momentarily. It should be reacquired just a few minutes from now, ahead of the actual capture of Dragon. And we've passed into an orbital sunrise. You can see a good view of Verts now, having joined Wilmore and Christopher Reddy in the cupola, so that he can document the final few moments of the robotic capture of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft, loaded with 2.6 crew on board the International Space Station. Dragon and the station currently flying just to the north of Quebec City, as the Canadian-built robotic arm is about to move towards the grapple fixture, the final grapple of the cargo vehicle.
Station Houston on 2 for Butch and Samantha. Just a Station Houston on 2 for Butch and Samantha. Just a
grapple of the cargo vehicle.
Station Houston on step 4 in 1.110.
And Houston on 2, we copy, go for capture.
Flight controllers report that Dragon is holding rock steady at its capture point. Butch Wilmore steady at its capture point. Butch Wilmore now in the process of sending the commands from the robotics workstation in the cupola to extend the 57-foot-long Canadian-built robotic arm for its grapple of the grapple fixture on SpaceX. The good view of that grapple fixture on the Dragon craft. In the trunk of the Dragon is the Cloud Aerosol Transport System experiment, the CATS experiment, that will be robotically installed on the external experiment platform at the forward end of the Kibo module, removed from the trunk and installed on the external experiment platform at the forward end of the Kibo module on Friday morning to begin its work to study aerosol phenomena in the Earth's atmosphere. We will be losing our TV signal once again momentarily, just a few seconds from now, hoping to reacquire it before the actual capture of Dragon.
On 2 for a Delta, we're observing in step 4.1.
Go ahead, Smith.
Send leap age. We sent the command capture automatic fast passive limp. We are supposed to verify in the SSRMS tip leap age. We sent the command capture automatic fast passive limp. We are supposed to verify backdrive passive speed fast. We have positive verification of speed fast. However, we see backdrive none.
Stand by.
This is Mission Control Houston here in the Flight Control Room. Flight Director Mike Lammers is having a brief conversation with the robotics officer, John Bellingham, here in Mission Control, just to ensure that we understand all of the systems parameters on the Canadarm2 robotic arm that is awaiting its final movement in for a grapple on the grapple fixture on the Dragon spacecraft that you see here in the field of view. The Dragon is in excellent shape, holding steady, just a few feet away from the International Space Station's robotic arm. We expect for a grapple of Dragon that would occur ahead of schedule here.
Letting that backdrive none.
And in the cupola, Station Commander Butch Wilmore and Samantha Cristoforetti awaiting further direction from the flight control team on proceeding for the grapple of Dragon that will complete its two-day rendezvous that began with its launch from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida atop a Falcon 9 rocket by SpaceX 2 days ago. The Dragon and the International Space Station flying 262 statute miles over the North Atlantic, beginning a northwest to southeasterly track that will carry the two craft over the northwest coast of Africa a short time from now.
Station Houston on 2 for the Dragon capture. It turns out that we have the same indications on SpaceX 4, so you guys have a go to proceed.
Copy.
And the robotics officer in Mission Control reports that the trigger for the end effector and the snares that will grab on to the grapple fixture of Dragon are now hot. The arm beginning to move in for its grapple of the Dragon at the end of this two-day rendezvous. The two spacecraft moving from northwest to southeast, approaching the border between France and Spain. Dragon has now disabled its thrusters in the so-called free drift orientation so that no inadvertent thruster firings will perturbate the grapple of Dragon by the robotic arm that has now been set in motion by Station Commander Butch Wilmore, operating from the robotics workstation in the cupola of the International Space Station. One meter now. The end effector is now over the grapple pin. And we have grapple at 4:54 a.m. Central Time, 5:54 a.m. Eastern Time. We have captured Dragon 262 statute miles over the Mediterranean. The grapple occurring 18 minutes ahead of schedule. A perfect rendezvous for Dragon. Again, Butch Wilmore operating the station's robotic arm, grappling the grapple fixture on Dragon at 4:54 a.m. Central, as the two spacecraft flew 262 statute miles over the Mediterranean.
Go for fast capture reconfiguration.
Houston copies and correct. Congratulations, Butch and Samantha. We'll call that one an OK 3-wire. Everybody says, not bad for a Navy guy. The folks in Mount Juliet, Tennessee could not be more proud than they are right now.
We're pretty thrilled up here too, comrade. Hey, thanks for that. And like you mentioned, you cued it, so fly Navy.
And we apologize for Santa and his Dragon sleigh to be a little bit more on the Eastern Orthodox schedule and calendar, but definitely a huge congratulations and thanks to our friends at SpaceX for bringing to ISS such a beautiful vehicle.
Yeah, we concur there, comrade, and congratulations, Hawthorne. Nice job. It's been a couple of days getting here, and we're excited to have it on board.
And that
we'll be digging in soon.
And that exchange between Marine officer Randy Bresnik, the spacecraft communicator here in Mission Control, and the naval officer Barry Wilmore, station commander, on board the cupola with Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency, referring to the supply of Christmas presents, making a belated arrival at the International Space Station, but belated nonetheless, in good shape, with a smooth and successful capture of the Dragon cargo craft occurring at 4:54 a.m. Central Time, 5:54 a.m. Eastern Time, as the two spacecraft flew 262 statute miles over the Mediterranean. And this spectacular view in high definition looking at the northern coast of Libya as the Dragon and the station fly in a northwest to southeasterly track across the African continent. Wilmore and Cristoforetti now will turn over. Next hour and a half or so of operations to the robotics officer here in Mission Control, John Bellingham, who will take over with the remote commanding to maneuver Dragon into its pre-installed position. You see the common berthing mechanism at the very top of the Dragon cargo craft. That will be aligned perfectly with the active common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the station. Ready to latch indications will be received here on the ground, and Dragon will be maneuvered in where the bolting of the spacecraft will begin. A series of 16 bolts in 4 gangs of 4 bolts apiece will drive Dragon to a hard mate to Harmony for the next 4 weeks of cargo unloading operations. The hatch to Dragon is scheduled to be opened tomorrow morning. However, if the crew continues to move ahead of schedule as it has been throughout the course of the morning, it is entirely possible. In advance of that, however, the next major milestone will be to get Dragon installed and bolted into place on the Earth-facing port of Harmony. Transpires over the next several hours. In advance of that, however, the next major milestone will be to get Dragon installed and bolted into place. We also will be advancing our coverage of the installation of Dragon from its previously published time at 6:45 a.m. Central Time, 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. And we will be back on the air with our berthing coverage at 6:45 a.m. Central Time on NASA television. So to recap, Dragon completing a flawless rendezvous to the International Space Station, grappled at 4:54 a.m. Central, 5:54 a.m. Eastern Time, held in place firmly by the station's Canadian-built robotic arm that was operated by Barry Wilmore, the station commander, with the assistance of Samantha Cristoforetti from the cupola of the International Space Station. After a short break here, the robotics officer in Mission Control will maneuver Dragon into its pre-installed position, and then finally it will be bolted into place to form a hard mate for the next 4 weeks of the cargo unloading operations, removing the 2.6 tons of supplies and experiments from not only inside Dragon but also from its trunk in the form of the Cloud Aerosol Transport System instrument that will be mounted on the external experiment platform at the forward end of the Kibo module. We'll be back on the air at 6:45 a.m. Central Time, 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time with our installation coverage, so you'll want to join us for that. Later in the morning, Space Station Live at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So we'll be back in less than 2 hours for the installation of Dragon at the International Space Station. For now, this is Mission Control, Houston.